So thanks everybody for coming along and coming to this session. It's the first Flourishing Futures session we've done online for a little while. We've run a handful of these sorts of events in person at our Flourish Hub, where we've invited Stones and Young, who are professional finance advisors and do various other things. We've invited them along to the hub as a bit of a social, and people have had one-to-ones and we've had food, and that's all been lovely. And we will run more of those. However, when we run those events, people don't always get to hear about the bigger picture and what these topics and themes are. And we've never got to sort of enable anybody from wherever they are to just listen in, which is what we're able to do through recording this tonight. And it might just give people the confidence to come to one of our next events, or at least give them some knowledge, tips and updates around these themes of things like money and mortgages and pensions and wills and life insurance. What are these things? Why are they important? Why it's never too late to bother or consider these things, or I don't think it is. So we're gonna get into the crux of that very soon. I'll just say a couple more quick things. One of the reasons we run these events is because alongside providing social enterprise development support, startup support, scale and growth support to different charities, social enterprises, different ventures, we're all about supporting people to build their financial resilience and build their economic independence, whatever that means for them. And so what we found is in supporting over 1,500 women into business in the last 10 years, that those who get there the quickest tend to be those that have got some means of financial support or ability to manage finances and understand some certain systems and processes. And so whilst this isn't about business finance, it's very much about personal finance. We've noticed that the two things go hand in hand. And what we also know, that freelancers, women in startups, people working in the charity sector, actually, they aren't always in jobs or roles where they're getting access to things like pensions or opportunities to consider life insurance or other financial tools that might be there in jobs in the public or the private sector. So we're just wanting to raise awareness of that a little bit and help people connect into these themes, because it's important. And why shouldn't we have this stuff at our disposal and make the most of what's there for people to whatever, climb up their ladder, whatever that may look like. So that's why we do this stuff. What else was I going to say? I think that was it really. It was just to give a bit of a context of why we run these events. We're looking forward to hearing from people later. If you've got any questions as we go, you can put those in the chat. We might take questions as we go through the Q&A. We have got Phil and John here after the Q&A that we're going to do. So we're going to spend about half an hour finding a bit more about, what got them into the work that they do and what they do day to day, what kind of support they offer people. We're going to think about, why it's important to keep a check on these things and what options, tips and things for us to consider in their areas of expertise. I'm keen if they've got examples, but we won't put them under pressure and confidentiality and all that. But we're keen to hear about any clients that they might have supported who didn't think that whatever affordability of a mortgage or things like life insurance or whatever was possible for them. I know there are some barriers for people around belief that this is even doable for different reasons, and maybe how they've helped clients overcome things. I know there's always options and there's always ways of considering things and making progress towards certain goals. So that's why we're keen to sort of hear on how they may have supported others to do that. But once we've had this Q&A, we've got a little bit of time for a good half an hour, 40 minutes or so, where we can set up some one-to-ones. So if people have got something that they wanted to talk to Phil or John about, we'll set up a breakout. Aishato's helping us sort some of that. And we can work out some little short slots to just find out what you wanted to learn more about, take down some details, have a quick chat, but then do a follow-up call on whatever it may be. And it'll be Phil or Bev who look at the kind of mortgage, stepping stones to mortgages, looking at mortgages, comparing or improving mortgage rates and situations, things like that. And John is more the sort of pensions, life insurance, wills, I'm guessing, or there are other people in the team as well alongside John that support on all of that. So those are the options for tonight. And I would say, to help Aishatu and me figure this out later, if you know now that you'd quite like to have a one-to-one, you can message us secretly. There's a just message Flourish Together. In fact, I might put my name on here, and Aisha might put a name on hers, and then we know who's who. If I can I do that now? Who knows? Yes. And so do put that in the chat if you can, or you might decide in 10 or 15 minutes, actually, go on, I'm going to chat to somebody about whatever. But yeah, pop your name forward if you're thinking of wanting to do that, so we can get those rostered and arranged. And yeah, hopefully you'll find it a really useful conversation. So I think without further ado, unless anyone's got any burning questions right now, I'm gonna come to the guys and just quickly say, I've known Phil, for over 20 years. I first went to Phil when I was tearing my hair out. I'd been rejected for a mortgage. I got this house I wanted to buy. I daren't say I was 20 something. I was in my, it was a bit of a shock to the system that we'd been rejected for this mortgage. And it was like, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? So I've got to say, Phil, since then, there's been several mortgages and several houses since then, moving around the country as I have. But literally trust Phil with my life, technically, because he's been so good, so calm, so patient, so knowledgeable with what he does. And Phil himself, is an entrepreneur. It's been great to watch him, who, was an individual consultant within an estate agent once upon a time. When I met him, he's now grown his own business, and he's grown his own team and his own partnership, doing what they do. So he's not just here as some bloke in a suit that's, come to tell us about this, that, and the other. He's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and now bought the tie to go with it. So Bill, do you want to tell us a bit more about kind of what you do, the company you set up, and what got you into it?
So thanks, Nicola. Nice to hear another Lancashire accent there, Karen. Can you guess where I'm from?
Oh, she's on mute.
Yeah. East Lancashire. Am I right?
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So yes, from Blackburn, born and bred.
Absolutely.
Proper broad. So yeah, I've been a mortgage advisor for 25 years now, independently. So previously to that, I worked for the Royal Bank of Scotland before becoming an independent advisor in the millennium. I'm based above two estate agents in Blackburn and Clitheroe. It's called Stones Young. So if you're ever driving around East Lancashire, you'll see lots of yellow signs, and we came up with the idea of making them look like speed cameras so people would turn their heads. So that's where it all came about. But pretty much, I'm of Stones Young. I'm Mr. Young. I deal with all the financial services, and like Nicola said, I've probably helped thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the last 20 odd years buy properties together. I've also helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, unfortunately, that have separated, that would end up guiding them that way. And I'm obviously just reading through here, about regards to, we help make people's dreams come true by getting them into the property, but sometimes dreams turn into nightmares, and we'll help people sort of manage the way, either taking on a property or going in separate ways. And I've dealt with thousands of customers of all different shapes and sizes. And I think the reason that I've been around for so long is, one, I don't charge any fees, and I never have done. Two, probably treat a 50 grand mortgage the same as a £5 million mortgage. There's no sort of differential for me. It all gets treated exactly the same amount of effort. I'm sure Nicola will shout for that. You can't help everybody, unfortunately. Sometimes you do have to have some uncomfortable conversations with customers, and you sometimes have to tell them that they don't want what they don't want to hear. But more often than not, if a client has got decent enough credit, can prove who they are, where they live, what they're earning, there's usually an avenue to go down. The system that I use is called TriGold. I've used it for 25 years. It's linked from Barclays to Yorkshire Building Society. It's a really good sourcing tool. I've also got a good sourcing tool up here as well. And ultimately, if there's an avenue for it to be found, I will generally find it. If there isn't an avenue, it's probably because there isn't an avenue. And Yeah, and hopefully with whoever I come across today, primarily because I'm based above an estate agent, most of the stuff I deal with day in, day out is obviously people making offers on properties who will then want an independent point of view, keep it all in-house, and that's where they come to me. At the moment, I'm dealing with a lot of people who have got mortgages up for renewal. So every couple of years, people generally do a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, a 5-year deal. Obviously, lots of people are having rate shocks at the moment because there isn't much interest rates with 1 or a 2 in front of it. So I've got all these customers at the moment that I am having to have uncomfortable conversations with for the first time in probably 16 years in some cases with some clients to say, look, this is what's going on at the moment. This is what it's going to cost. Managing their expectations. There's lots of things you can do to try and soften the blow, extend the term. You can incorporate debt consolidation if they they took that. There's a few things that the government have helped with, something called mortgage charter, where they've got contacted all the lenders to try and help people deal with the shock of a rate shock. If suddenly they've bitten off more than they can chew a couple of years ago, and suddenly things have transpired that they're really struggling, living from one month to the other, there is things that we can do. And, the main thing I'll talk about today is, with clients, you never ever bury your head in the sand. It's all about communication, be it with me, be it with the lender. And you mentioned there about asking about examples. I have had something recently with a lady who was in a right pickle, had been robbing Peter to pay Paul to get a massive extension done, costs circulate, going out of control, this, that, and the other. And it's actually, she got put onto me by her sister as a lastminute.com scenario, but she was getting herself in a right tizwas about it, how long it was taking, getting passed from pillar to post, getting ghosted a lot of time. It's a difficult job being a mortgage broker, and everybody wants a piece of you. They want it like yesterday. And there's a lot of people that have been around 25 years doing what I'm doing and probably had enough of it and got out of the industry. And I get so many clients passed to me because a lot of mortgage brokers have actually disappeared out of the industry now, probably fed up with compliance, fed up with technology taking over our roles. It's one of the things I fear of. The lenders are trying to make it easier for clients to deal with people direct and take away the face-to-face communication, and trying to make this Gen Z generation, let's press a QR code and you're moving next Friday job happen. And,
Life's not really like that.
That's where I think things are going, unfortunately. I'm hopeful that, I'm 46 now. If I'm getting another 15 years out of doing this job, I'll be very incredibly happy. But I do worry about AI. And, AI doesn't help people that are vulnerable and, need the hand holding and want a good, honest, salt of the earth. Tell me how's it is, Phil. What do I need to do? And, like you say, you, Nicola, look after you, and knowing that no matter how busy I am, communicate with you. Ultimately, I'm a business. I'm here to make a living just like anybody else, and I get paid for doing mortgages, but I only get paid if it goes through. And that's how we work. So we do a lot of stuff at the front end to try and help manage, help people hold a hand and get in. And obviously, if I do a decent job like I did for Nicola all those years ago, she'll keep coming back. She'll keep recommending, knowing that, pass a client to me, they'll get treated the way she got treated. And yeah, I've babbled on enough now, so I'll let John crack on.
And I think there's certainly challenging times for people who've got mortgages, as I say, and we might have people here who've never not never considered it, but thought this stuff isn't for them. So we might even come back to some basics shortly to just work out what position have you got to be in to attempt to go for a mortgage, but and how things can change. It sounds awful, but things can change over your life just because you've not had the means or the deposit or the this or the that or the what kind of salary you need to try and go for a mortgage.
Even stuff like I know, potentially this group is to do with women, if you will, and a lot of the time, especially in January, I always make a bit of a joke in January that it's always our best month for house sales, because unfortunately you get a lot of people that get Christmas out of the way for the kids and decide we're separating, we're going to put the house up for sale. So we get a house on the market and potentially I get 2 mortgages out of it, be it the bloke moving that way and the woman going that way. But but obviously from a woman's perspective, especially if they've got children, there's then maintenance that can be taken into consideration, child benefit, universal credits. A lot of the time they don't even realise you can use that in conjunction with your income. So there's plenty of single parents that I've helped, certainly even at the beginning of this year, that, you know, by no choice of their own have become single parents, and they want to stay in the property to keep the kids happy, keep them in the school, and don't realise actually they're in a position that they can take it on themselves, because they think, oh, I'm only a part-time teacher earning 20 grand a year. There's no way I can take on a mortgage of 130 grand. Well, actually, because of the maintenance, because of the child benefit, because of this, you actually can.
It's about thinking it through, isn't it? Like you say.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might come back to some of the nuts and bolts shortly, or people might have questions around that. But
Yeah.
John, I'll come to you if you want to let us know more about your role within the setup. I know I kind of given a flavour of some of the things that you do, but do you want to just give us a, you know, what's your role, and how did you get into this kind of world of work?
I was many years ago. I was a teacher, a secondary school teacher, and I was because I was quite good with numbers. People would ask me to help them with the taxes, and so there were so many people asking. Eventually, I set up my own accountancy firm, and so I started helping people with putting the numbers together for a business or for their personal life or whatever they were doing, and it started expanding. And when I moved over this way, because we lived in Scarborough then, even though I'm from Blackburn, I went to talk to Nigel and to Phil, and you know, we had a chat about how the firm was going and what the ethos was like there. And I was invited to come on as a financial advisor because I had all the qualifications already. And it was amazing to find the sort of things that people needed, because I deal with pensions, I deal with insurances, I deal with wills. So anything really that people need alongside tax advice. And you'd see a new thing every day. Every person's different, and I often find that people don't know what they don't know. So people come, and one of the most common things that people say to me is, you know, my biggest regret after talking to you is that I didn't come and talk to you 20 years ago. But it's not too late, because we can then put things in order. Recently, we've had the cost of living crisis, so there's several conversations I've had with people where it's been, you know, they've been hard conversations because they've been trying to put their affairs in order. They're realising they've got to the point where things are going a bit wrong because they've got more money going out than they've got coming in, and then we've had to have a conversation about that, which is not always easy. People often try to do things too late. So when you're dealing with pensions, or when you're dealing with life insurance or something like that, people only tend to think about those things when they're about to retire, or when something's already happened. And it's much better to get ahead of yourself in something like that, especially if it's to do with insurance, because you can. If you've already been, for instance, if you wanted a critical illness cover for if you had a job that needed that, and then you already have got a critical illness, then it's too late. So with most things, it isn't too late, but with some things, it can be. So it's always worth thinking about. With having a will, it's people often don't think about that because they don't like to think about dying. But imagine you have two people who are living together. They plan to stay together for the rest of their life, but they're not married. And then one of them dies, and they would have wanted their partner to perhaps to have everything. And of course, they might find that when there's no will, then due to the way the law works, all the money might go to somebody that they're estranged from, that they wouldn't have wanted to give anything to. So it's all about planning and thinking ahead about that with finance. And people often don't know what the law is, or they're not sure how tax works or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of different things involved in the job, but I'm here for anything to do with that, anything that's not mortgages really. So it's probably going to be something that can come my way.
Great stuff. And certainly know from my own experience, and people have their own sort of stuff here. I got life cover and all these things back in the day, and then you're absolutely right. The sooner you get doing that stuff, the cheaper it is. You know,
Yeah.
It was peanuts for me to get life cover, and you know, it's probably a job of ours and different organisations we work with to try and encourage more young younger people and younger women in particular to take on these things early on, where they won't miss the money because it's not, it's 5 or 10 or 15 quid, throughout their life. I made the silly mistake. Well, I just couldn't carry on with it after my divorce. So a certain cost that you got to think, and so yeah, basically, I've not had life cover for some time, and it does play on my mind. And I know we've had a chat, Phil, and I'm like, how do I manage this? But anyway, I, still chip away on that one. And I think, for people who are in certain positions or are on their own, and we work with lots of women who are, single parents, possibly running their own businesses and different things, having that peace of mind, knowing that there's certain things in place if something crops up or they need support or whatever else, particularly with a lot of people that we work with who don't have perhaps wider family support networks in other ways, or, different things that crop up. Some of these things are good to explore, because I know now, whereas it was about, I don't know, 12 or 15 quid a month for my life cover years ago that Phil kindly set up for me, when I was having to go through cost cutting exercises years ago, now it's more like, 35 to 50 pounds for whatever it is I want to cover. And that's a bit more of a wedge where you think, oh, but with the right budgeting and the right thinking things through, and what can we save and what do I not really need? I was laughing with someone earlier about, they thought they'd only bought 1 or 2 McDonald's for the kids that month, and actually they'd bought about 12 when they looked at it. It's like, what are you prioritizing? So while people may have some one-to-ones with Phil and John shortly, we have got a bit of a light-hearted but quite a serious tool and exercise to look at, are your finances in apple pie order? And I'll just flag up for some of you that would know, we have a woman called May Fairweather who we've supported to set up a social enterprise that's all about money and budgeting and your relationship with money and how you deal with making decisions about money, whether you've got a lot of it, whether you've got none of it. She's very good at looking through all of those sorts of options, and she's also very, very knowledgeable about the benefit systems and what people are entitled to, where they might not have the support that they need, and how to manage setting up businesses and doing other things while, when you're in receipt of benefits. There are constraints around this stuff. So I'll come back to it later, but we are going to be running a session with May on Tuesday the 25th of June in the daytime, just as an exploration of, how do you go about setting up a venture when you're in receipt of various benefits, just because people can come a cropper on that. Anyway, that's a quick plug for later, but I just wonder, giving you thinking time really, has anybody got any particular questions? Obviously we can set up some one-to-ones shortly. We've said we've got time between sort of 22 quarter to and sort of 20 past 7 to be having a look at some of that. But I just thought, are there any questions in the round that people might have on any of these topics, any of these themes?
One of the things I got that I've just realised, I got a couple of kind of, well, I thought they were life insurance, and I think they probably are. It's just that I suddenly got this, because I'm like 60 this next year. I was starting to get letters about, oh, your life insurance is going to stop. I'm like, what? Which I think one of them's called a level term assurance. And I can't remember what the other one, but it's going for another 20 years or something. But does that sound right? I mean, I don't know. I suppose I thought life insurance, you pay it, you're covered, that's it.
You usually take it out for a term. So you'd have, for instance, you might take to cover a mortgage. It's quite a common reason for getting life insurance. So you might say, well, I'm going to take it out for 20 years, and they'll give you a cover based upon that. So you'll pay the money for 20 years. And if you die at any time in that 20-year period, then they'll pay out to the person you've nominated.
It might have been. I mean, although I had an endowment policy as well, so I thought I would have had both, would I?
I'd have to see the terms of the policy. If you could get hold of that and send it to me, then I could talk it through with you.
I don't know. It just kind of surprised me that suddenly, because as I say, the other one doesn't stop until 2043 or something, which is quite a bit further on. I just didn't know didn't know there was differences. I just thought life insurance, that's it, you know.
The whole of life insurance you're thinking about, where you take it out for the whole of your life, so it doesn't matter when you die, but it's very expensive, is that?
I mean, I've had it since I was 20.
Yeah, well, you might have took 40 years out then. That's probably, you took 40 years to cover out. In the chat, I've just put my email address. So if it's john@stonesfinancial.co.uk, if you want me to have a look at the policy you've got to give you some, to talk through it with you, then send a copy of it to that and I can have a look at it and tell you what the details mean if you want.
And half the battle is keeping hold of our life admin, isn't it? You know, sometimes we set these things up. I know from my pension, and this, I'm sure this is the case with other people, you work in certain jobs earlier in your career and you have these pensions and then they sort of disappear, or you move on and then what happens? You know, that's the end of that. I'm probably had pensions in a couple of jobs in the past. And then there was one particular one, don't quote me, I feel like it, and I should know this, you know, you think you're an intelligent woman, why do you not know this? I think it's with Scottish Widows, or I've got the details anyway, I do have them squirreled away and I've got emails off them now. But I decided to go back to my pension a few years ago. That was, although I couldn't afford life insurance as well, I'm like, I've really got to start paying into my pension again. And so after about a, don't quote me, 8-year, 9-year, maybe longer break from not paying into a pension, particularly setting up my own business and doing all this stuff, I was very keen that I had to get back in the saddle with that, because trying to rely on the state pension seems a bit precarious to me. And so yeah, I've got back in the saddle. I'm now paying into my particular pension. But if just probably another one for you, John, if people have pensions over the years, you know, how do they go about tracking them down? And, you know, what do people do? You know, if they're sitting there thinking, oh yeah, years ago I worked for this thing, I wonder where that money went. Is there a way of figuring it out?
Yeah, there are ways. There's a government website that helps you with it, but it's really difficult to use. The easiest way for a person is probably to send an email to the company you worked for and say, can you give me the details of the pension from when I worked for you? And they have to then supply with the information. They might just tell you who to ask. They might give you an email address of the pension provider, and then you can say, can I have details of my pension? They'll probably ask for your identification. And then once they've proved it's really you asking for it, they'll send you everything. And at that point, you can do whatever you want with it. Probably a good idea to talk to a financial advisor once you've got the information, but it's obviously up to you.
Imagine.
There are banks that can help you too. AJ Bell is a bank that has a pension finder resource on it, but they've changed it recently. So you have to actually open an account with them to actually use it. So it's easier just to contact your former employer and say, let me know the details of my pension, please.
Gosh, and I guess in some cases you can do that because they exist. But I guess in cases where the company's closed down,
that's where it's a bit more difficult, yeah.
Mm.
So again, that you could talk to someone about it, and there's a citizen advisor as well as financial advisors for this, but you could then do that through the pension finder on the government website or on a bank like AJ Bell, or you could then well, a simple thing would be to do a Google search. So if your company was called you know,
I'm thinking I worked for, as a daft example,
Yeah.
back in the day when I was a whippersnapper, but I definitely paid into a pension. I worked for Richard Shops, for anybody that ever remembers those when I was tiny. Used to wear a suit every day at 15, 16 and buy everybody's booze because I looked old, but that's another story. And I definitely paid into a you know, pension pot, but that was part of the Sears group at the time. Then they became Arcadia. Richard Shops definitely closed down years ago.
Well, if someone's taken them over, you could ask them for the details. If you could also just do a simple thing like Google Richard Shops pensions and see, and it might come up. You might get lucky. If it doesn't, and you thought it was Scottish Widows, for instance, you could you could look on Scottish Widows. Just Google that. You'll find Scottish Widows. Find the contact details, and then you could send an email to Scottish Widows saying, I think I've got a pension with you from when I worked at this company. Could you please check? And they'll do that for you. They might want identifications. They might ask, you know, please send me your driving license or whatever ID that they particularly want. I mean, it depends. But you know, because they don't want to just give your pension details out to somebody else, but they'll check for you.
Interesting. Well, I won't keep hogging all the questions because clearly there's other people here, but I'm hoping that's helpful for others. I remember a woman on the call recently had a similar thing where she'd been backtracking through all the pensions, and eventually she ended up putting them. I think there's certain pensions where you can funnel them all into one place. And am I right in thinking the Nest is a version of that, or I don't know? Are there ways of scooping up your pensions to put them in one place?
Yes, there are. Yeah, we can do that, but other people can do it too. Nest, I think, is more of an example of an employer's pension scheme. So there's the pension scheme set up to help employers. They might not be necessarily give you the best returns or the best amount of money at the end of it, but they'll be simple and they'll work for the employer rather than for you. So Nest is a good example of that. It's a standard one. It's used by quite a lot of people. There were a few of those schemes.
But then, like you say, if you're wanting to get a higher return or you're funneling your pensions together individually, going through an advisor like yourself would be potentially a way to look at that.
Yeah, because we could actually.
Oh,
sorry, Phil.
So I was going to say, John, because I obviously used to work at Royal Bank of Scotland, it's got me thinking now. So if I didn't contact the Royal Bank of Scotland, what actually happens to that money? They're not going to proactively find me, are they?
No, they're not. And I'll still be sat there in a pot somewhere.
They're not at liberty to either, I'm guessing.
Probably not with the GDPR rules now.
Right. So unless I get in contact with them and say there's 50 grand sat there, basically, unless I contact them, that'll just go into a black hole with them, whatever.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So even when you hit retirement age, if you don't go and say, right, I want my pension now, I guess if you've not kept on top of any house moves and any stuff and kept in the loop with them, they couldn't knit it together even if they wanted to.
No, they might be sending statements to an old address. There could be an old address and they're receiving letters to, every year with your annual statement. It's quite possible. If they're even sending it you.
Yeah, interesting.
But what we can do is what we'd usually do with that is once we've found out where all the pensions are, we'd look at the person's individual situation and say, well, what's your risk profile? What's your goals? How old do you want to be when you retire? How much money do you want to have coming in when you retire? So all these things mixed together to give the individuals to find out what solution would be appropriate for that individual, and we can access the whole of the market, so we can look at the performance of all the funds. And some people, for instance, they really care about the environment and they want to make sure that the funds are responsibly sourced. Other people just want to make as much money as possible, and those two can be linked, by the way. And there's all sorts of things come into it, but we can get a solution that's for that particular person. And then if they want, they can put all the money in one pot, and then it's very simple, and they can have access online to it, so they can see every day if they want to how it's doing, and that we can make a financial projection for them. So we can say, by the time you get to the age that you want to retire, you'll be able to have approximately this much money. And then we can take the state pension into account as well and say, this is how much you're going to have to live off, basically, and make a realistic financial plan, which is what a lot of people sadly don't do. And then they get caught short and find they haven't got enough money for what they want to do. And perhaps they could have done if they'd actually planned it beforehand.
Well, that's why we've got a night like tonight, Phil. So I do hope some of the people on the call are going to take you up on a bit of a chat and just to think of you things and option scenarios too. I just wonder, before we start looking at possible one-to-ones, whether we've got any wider questions. We've obviously been asking our own there very greedily, but anybody else got any burning questions on a particular theme?
What do you think about those? I'm trying to think of the one that I saw recently. It's called Busy Bee or something. But these schemes where they're talking about making it so much easier to be able to put all of your pots together, etc., etc. I think Busy Bee was on an app or something. It seems to me that there isn't an awful lot. It's almost like there isn't an awful lot of advice goes in behind it. It's kind of like, or am I just talking a load of BS?
No, you're quite right. It's, these things have their place, and it will provide a solution. Because they'll put the pots together and they'll put you into a big pot with some other people. Where they fall down compared to a financial advisor, in my opinion, is they won't be as personalised. because, you know, we're going to look at everything about you and your financial circumstances, and we're going to also access the whole of the market. Whereas a lot of these places, they have a set number of funds. They might have 5 funds, and they'll put you in one of those funds.
And
And
that's
that's
also
it.
why you have to be an independent financial advisor rather than
Exactly. We're independent. We're not tied to any particular models or particular fund sets. We can just say, we can look at what's the best out there based upon your profile personally, and then we can find the right thing for you. And we can, you know, can make projections based on what you want and what you need. Whereas they will do something. There'll be a profiling tool online. You'll say, well, I want it risky or not risky or whatever, and then it'll all go into one of their pots. You know, so it's not that it doesn't work. It's just not as personalized. And in my opinion, that makes it not as good.
Mm. Can't be as sort of pinpointing what you're trying to get to, I suppose. Anybody, any other questions on things? I'm trying to think what questions I've got that could still be asked in the round. Trying to think. I was sort of picking up on the sort of mortgage side. I guess Phil, I was just going to ask sort of out loud, just around is there a certain amount, and this is, I'm not expecting you to know the answer, I'm just thinking out loud, you know, if I wasn't on the property ladder, and thank the Lord I had the ability to get on the property ladder when I was very young by accident, by, you know, stumbling across living in Blackburn, and, you know, somehow way back then, three grand was enough of a deposit to buy a terrace house. So it was quite a different kettle of fish. But you know, back then, you know, I was earning 14,500, you know, and, you know, for me as a little graduate coming out of uni, although it wasn't mega bucks, it was fine. And for where I was living, it worked out okay. We're living in a different world now. And it feels like life and finances and our understanding of what it means to be financially viable in, you know, in today's day and age is shifting all the time. And I just wonder, is there it might be a daft question, but is there a kind of an amount? Is there an annual salary that you should be on in order to buy a house these days?
Well, I'm in a lucky position because where I live and work is East Lancashire. The wages are pretty good, to be fair. The house prices aren't stupidly gone off the stratosphere. So it's one of the things I've noticed certainly this year. There's been a lot of landlords getting rid of properties, and landlords were obviously taking all the properties off the first-time buyers, if you will, because any 2 up, 2 down that would, you know, if you've ever driven through Blackburn, you know, it is chimney pots after chimney pots, lots of terrace houses. But your landlords were picking them up left, right, and centre because of all the tax rule changes, the EPC rules changes. Obviously your mortgage interest rates going up, so there's not as much money in it now. A lot of the landlords are getting rid of properties, which has obviously been music to my ears because lots of first-time buyers have been wanting to now get involved. You know, my eldest lad, 23, he's literally just purchased a property in Clitheroe in March. He's 23, and I think what you found certainly with that, I call him a Gen Z generation, if you will, because he was a millennial. But they all got involved with the Help to Buy ISAs, putting money away into that. So I've got a lot of first-time buyers where they've proactively been putting money away into these Help to Buy ISAs, which was £200 a month, up to a maximum of 12 grand, and the government would give you 3 grand towards it. So you had 15 grand, if you will. Now, if you've got
still exist, Phil?
Pardon?
Does the Help to Buy ISA still exist?
Unfortunately not, but they have been replaced by something called a LISA, which John might come on that as well, but it's called a LISA actually.
Yeah.
Lifetime ISA, which can be used towards a deposit for a house or towards pension in the future. But certainly the Help to Buy ISAs, a lot of your millennials, as I put them, have been putting away. You know, if they've had parents that have said, look, come on, Martin Lewis, put £1 in and then start putting money in each month. It's free money when you come to buy a property. So what's happened is, certainly I've noticed in the last 6 months, all the rents have obviously gone through the roof. Your first-time buyers have been putting money away into these Help to Buy ISAs. You know, most first-time buyer wages, I would say on average, are around 25 grand. So you've got a couple, you know, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, for instance, 50 grand between them. They've both got Help to Buy ISAs, potentially 30 grand between them to put in. They're not renting anymore, they're buying a property. And that's certainly what's been happening this year. And I say to a lot of my first time buyers, if you work on an average, a person on their own, 4.5 times income, a joint couple is usually 4 times joint. Now, obviously, if you've got
Is that still a ratio that gets worked to? Because I remember, you know,
yeah, it is,
4 or
to be fair.
5 times your salary was
Obviously,
what you might be
yeah.
able to get as a mortgage. Is that still a thing?
Roughly, you can get 5 times income if you're a higher earner. So you tend to find if you're more towards a 40% taxpayer, 5 times is what they'll do. If you're a basic taxpayer, you generally find it's 4.5 times income. Now, obviously, if you've got a Porsche on finance, a 15 grand credit card, your 4.5 times income is not going to transpire because they'll start taking all those into account. If you've got dependent children, you know, the lenders factor into their calculators that unfortunately, you know, below me buying a property when I'm on 25 grand a year against a single lady who's got 2 children, they know that she's going to have more outgoings than me. So they do factor it into the affordability calculator. But obviously then they'll take into account if she gets maintenance, she gets child benefit. You tend to find though, they don't necessarily outdo the outgoing of having 2 dependents. It does dramatically reduce what you can borrow because they do trust these calculators being the cost of living, what someone's earning, the deposit you're putting down, your credit score. But general rule of thumb, when I speak to a first-time buyer, I would say, look, it's 4.5 times single or 4 times joint, providing you've not suddenly got an Audi on finance or a Range Rover on finance. That's suddenly a mortgage payment in itself.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's
that's
helpful information in itself because I mean, a lot of women we work with won't have the Porsche on finance or much else. But I think
you'd be surprised with these millennials. Look at that, they got a better car than me.
Well, I won't get into my situation, but yeah, I'm only asking questions because other people are kind of coming forward, and we've not yet had anyone brave enough to go in for a one-to-one, and that's fine. You know, sometimes it is a bit like, oh, where do we start? What do we chat about? But I've got another question while people are thinking. So one of the things, Phil, that frustrates us is all this stuff, these changes. You talked about frustrations yourself with how the industry's changed, and for anybody who's joined our calls before online, we found a brilliant person again who I met in Blackburn called Stacey, who she worked with me at Alimio when I worked there years ago, but she became a financial advisor, mortgage advisor in and around, I think she worked for Your Move or Right Move or whatever it's called eventually. And she's come on and done some sessions with people around building their confidence to believe getting on the property ladder is an option and what some of the challenges are in this sort of stuff. But she came out of the industry because of how it had changed and knowing that these things crop up, like a Help to Buy ISA is there 1 minute or for so many years for a certain demographic and these things disappear. Are there, and I'll gladly have it as a question to take away, are there policy think tanks or national agencies who are there for the benefit of kind of public fiscal stuff? And I'm just thinking, you know, as an organisation, Flourish and a number of the organisations we work with, we'd have a lot of knowledge, a lot of intelligence, a lot of man and woman power to say, this is the lay of the land, this is the landscape, this is what's actually needed in order to not send further people into hardship or in order to create financial tools and instruments that work for people, a bit like your Banker Dave type stuff, I suppose. You know, are there industry agencies out there who want to gather intelligence around how to better design financial tools?
I mean, I would probably say the most, how do I put it? When you say about Banker Dave there, is I have a really good relationship with Skipton Building Society.
Yeah.
They're always trying to think outside the box of what could we do to help people get on the property ladder that no one else is thinking. So you might have seen 6 or so months ago, they came up with 100% mortgage for people that are renting a property, that were obviously renting then, so therefore didn't have any spare cash to put away for savings because they've got a rent, they've still got all the bills to pay. So hence there wasn't any spare cash. But they came up with something that, you know, was basically a rent to buy scheme that, you know, if the landlord if it was willing to sell the property to them, without a deposit because they've done something like that, paying the mortgage or rent for a certain amount of time. And that all, that all came from, I think, from a broker just suggesting it as an idea to them. They took it away, brainstormed it, and they came back. Now, you wouldn't be able to do that with your likes of Santander, NatWest, Halifax, because, a small Mr. Phil Young in an office in Blackburn. But, the likes of your Skips and your sort of smaller building societies, they'll always, at the end of the day, building societies are meant to sort of look after their own community. So you've got Furness Building Society, it'll look after the Cumbria and Lake District areas. So they'll try and do mortgages or outside the box thinking lending for their own community, if you will. So they'll do better deals for LA and CA postcodes. Used to have Cheshire Building Society, but they got taken over by Nationwide Building Society. But Skipton Building Society,
you've got the Vernon here in Stockport.
Is that what you got down there? So what you'll probably find, like Cumberland Building Society, they'll do stuff that no other bank will do, but they're looking after their own area, if you will. But Skipton Building Society, I always, I go to a lot of sort of webinars, seminars with them, and they'll always try to sort of say, look, is there anything that anyone can think of that no one else has thought of that we could maybe put towards our risk assessment team to see is it something that we could.
If they ever want to do a focus group or have a chat with wider people, I'm sure we could pull a bundle of brains together, because we've been wrestling with these sorts of questions for a few years now. And
I mean, you find with the Help to Buy side of things, ultimately the money ran out for the government, didn't it? So they're obviously having to top everyone's ISA by £3,000 for everyone that completes. Everybody that was anyone that had a child that was 16, 17, 18 opened up a Help to Buy ISA, because it's free money if you're buying a house.
If you know it exists, and if you can, isn't it? And that's the other thing. But
obviously things, no one knows what's going to happen potentially when Labour gets in. It's really weird, and it's going a little bit off track, but I had one of my clients who isn't a client anymore, because she was lucky enough that she paid her mortgage off because she inherited a load of money. But what she did do, instead of having a mortgage, she decided to send her only child to private school, Westholme in Blackburn. You'll remember that school. And I didn't realise how much stuff like that cost. But she made a conversation with me yesterday that the Westholme had written to every parent to say if Labour get in, because they weren't expecting the election to be in July, they thought it would be in November. But basically, if Labour get in, they've already said that they're going to start VAT on private schools. So all the fees are going to go up 20%. Well, I didn't realise how much they cost anyway. So she's basically talking to me is that they've offered us a deal that if we pay for it all up front now until our child goes to sixth form, we'll get a discount, but obviously we'll save the 20%. She wanted to borrow £85,000 on her house.
Wow.
So, and that's getting the discount. And I said, well, what happens if Westholme goes bum? Because they suddenly lose all these people who suddenly don't want to pay the extra 20%. We lose it. And I was like, wow, what a decision to, and they've got to the 18th of June to decide do they want to take advantage of it or not. And I was like, wow, what a position to be put in. Obviously, and she's just like, she said, look, Phil, I'm not privileged.
I was going to say, go to Pleckgate, but I'm kidding.
I said send her to Ribblesdale like I did. Mine are doing all right, but but because the child's in there now, settled, they don't want any upheaval for him. They put £1,000 a month away that they were using for the mortgage because they were lucky enough to get it paid off because of inheritance, which they didn't really want, but it happened, and utilise that money. But they've now in a position that, do we need to factor in an extra 20% uplift that we've not even budgeted for, or do we sort of raise the money back on the house and pay it off and it be done with the risk factor that hopefully moves the line and they reach sixth form and they've ended up saving obviously quite a lot of money.
GCSEs? No, I'm kidding. We're getting into other territory. But Karen's got a hand up, so I'm gonna come to Karen while we digress.
Yeah, I know Westholme. Years and years ago, my young sister went there, but not for very long. My question is, that can't be right. That can't be morally, ethically right to do that. Think of the interest that school is going to gain if parents do that and fork out this money, forward planning. And I just think that's so wrong. Is there not some accountability somewhere that goes, hang on a minute, you can't be doing this? Because I think that's really out of order.
I mean, it's like I said to my client, the people that are going to take that up are the ones that can afford to lose it. And there will be lots of people that can afford to. You know, there is millionaires that probably send their children to that school. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how they get around with it, but they've even put a deadline, the 18th of June, to do it. Otherwise, because I think they were also predicting the election was going to be in November, so hence it'd be the new school year. But yes, literally, she phoned me yesterday saying I might need to borrow 80 odd grand on the house, and could you get it to me by the 18th of June? And I said, I'm good at my job, but I don't think I'm that good.
I think it's a form of exploitation as well. Yeah. There's a bully tactic there. Yeah. There's the unpredictability, the gaining financially on that. And yeah, okay, climate wise, we know it's a difficult time. But to expect that and then that forward longevity as well, I think that's really out of order.
But also the risk that if they do lose pupils, they're going to lose the internet.
Sorry, I'm talking over you. I apologise. Carry on.
No, but I was going to say, but like I said to her, it's the risk factor that, you know, there's no guarantee. They don't know how many people are going to take it up. A lot of people are probably going to suck it and see if they can manage multiple. But you're going to get people some the same way. On the goalposts change so much here, I'm taking them out. Well, suddenly they take them out. Are they going to then replace them? Can the school then run at a profit to even keep going? You know, I've heard on the grapevine the likes of Oak Hill and Moreland, which are based in Clitheroe, they're on the verge of closing already, you know. And this is even before this, you know. Now you get your likes of Stonehurst and Westholme that might then pick up the scraps of that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I did not realise, because my children went to state school and they've loved it and enjoyed it. I didn't realise how much it cost.
But this is all based. I'll come to you in a second, Samira. I can see you've got your hand up. This is all based on the fact that there's an election coming up, and if Labour get in, they're going to put tax on.
They're going to put private schools. They're going to start charging VAT on it.
Yeah.
So it's 20%. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, a new government coming in, we don't know what changes they're going to do with helping first-time buyers. You know, are they going to do stuff with stamp duty? Are they, you know, all these little incentives to try and get people moving? But I'll honestly say this year so far, I've been busy. You know, and because of what I've said, you know, first-time buyers, interest rates are high. They're like 4.5% rather than 2.5%. But your first-time buyers don't know any different. It's cheaper to probably get a mortgage than it is to rent. Happy days for me. Landlords are offloading the terraces. Happy days for first-time buyers. So I've actually been really busy this year. It's all positive from my point of view. But you know, the only thing that is hard work at the moment is all the uncomfortable conversations you're having with customers, where suddenly you're having to say, "Look, I'm really sorry for standing still. It's an extra 400 quid a month. How do you feel about that?" The only sort of weirdness is the negativity of the media. Everyone's assuming it's going to be even worse. So when I'm actually having a chat with them, it's like, oh, that's not as bad as I thought. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, so people are prepared for it. But what I have also noticed, you know, wages have gone up. You know, I've just done one today for a client. She was on 23 grand 2 years ago. Now she's on 41. You know, it's gone up quite, you know, people's wages, you know, the national living wage now is 23 grand. You know, when I started working at Royal Bank of Scotland on the counter back in 1998, I was on 8. You know, things have all gone up, but unfortunately everything else has gone up.
Exactly. Samira, you've had your hand up patiently there. I'm just going to come to see whether you've got a question.
It was just a comment really to say thank you, because my personal financial situation has changed quite drastically even since the last event of this sort. But listening to you guys has made me feel a lot better. So just wanted to say that.
Oh, well, that's good to hear, Samira. Yeah, things can change very quickly, can't they, in different ways, both positively and negatively. And I think it's having a sounding board, whether it's a peer-to-peer sounding board, which we have created through this Flourishing Futures programme, or whether it's through talking to experts to kind of number crunch and just lay it all down to, like Phil said, things can sound a lot worse than they are. And actually, when you write them down, if you've never had support to think these things through before, just going through the exercise to know where you're at in the scheme of your financial situation and areas where you have got opportunities, areas that's a bit of a stretch, but with this, that, and something else, you've got options, or areas where you need to kind of gain support, look at things in different ways. It's all helpful because it helps you kind of, you know, become more buoyant in whatever which way, shape, or form you need to be, really. So yeah, thanks for that feedback, Samira. I'm conscious everyone's been a bit shy tonight, which is fine. I think we're busy as well. I think just going through the exercise of talking these things through, recording them, there'll be people who pick these things back up. And I think they'll be able to go away, cogitate, and follow up with Phil and John directly, or some of the wider team. We're likely to try and have a future session of this type, where there'll be one-to-ones later on in the year. We've sort of worked with Stones and Young on this, maybe to run a couple of these sessions a year max, because sometimes time needs to elapse. People need to think things through, and clearly the guys are busy and they're based up in Lancashire, and we bring them down here. So we do this a couple of times a year, and perhaps an online sort of chat. So I'm just triple checking whether anybody wants a one-to-one. We can set these things up, or we can let Phil and John get on with their dinner. I'm not saying that to kind of stop people. They're committed for the for the next half hour, but
I've got another client after this anyway, so it's fine. But,
exactly.
I mean, what I was going to say, Nicola, I mean, the next 4 to 5 weeks may be interesting to see what are the Tories going to propose. I'm sure they might come up with some sort of vote-winning things for the housing market, for first-time buyers. They might come up with something on John's side of things with regards to the pensions, and vice versa for Labour. You'd assume they're all going to try and come out with something to try and win. Let's see what transfer. I've got lots of friends that are IFAs, and they're all panicking about Labour getting in, thinking that they're going to ruin the economy, for instance. So no, I don't know whether that's going to be the case. I say I've been doing this job for 20 odd years. When I first started doing the job, I think it was Tony Blair. It was Tony Blair that was in charge then. And, in the early 2000s, things were all right, weren't they? I know things went peaked on in 2008 with the Northern Rock thing, but that was more banks not being regulated properly and doing whatever they wanted to do. But then obviously we've had the Tory side of things, and, at the end of the day, they've done some good things, done some bad things. But, at the end of the day, I look at East Lancashire, and I think East Lancashire's always been a little bit behind everywhere else in the country. You'll know, Nicola, if you'd have picked your house up on Newington Avenue and put it in Worsley, it'd have been treble the cost, wouldn't it? And you get a lot more for your money over in East Lancashire, and the wages are actually getting better.
We'll move back to Lancashire, Phil. That's the one.
She'll be moving back to God's country.
Absolutely.
So,
but the thing is, it's interesting because, a lot of the people we support and work with are around Greater Manchester, and every borough is very different, isn't it? And so you've got the supposedly more affluent south, which is and isn't the case, depending on every borough's got its sort of more affluent and less affluent areas. So there's affordable things in every borough, whether that's on a rent basis or on a buying basis. But it has got tougher, it has got tighter, and certainly but what I was going to say is certainly in certain boroughs of Greater Manchester, so even in not going quite as far as God's country, and I've got friends in Yorkshire who'd say it's there, but basically there are boroughs of Manchester, be it Tameside, be it Wigan, Bury and other areas where, there's you've only got to do your right move searches to see, what you can get for 100 grand or less, or whatever the situation. And don't get me wrong, you've got to take certain things into consideration, and safety and various things, but there's options. And certainly, like you say, the media can blow a real spin on situations that aren't the whole picture of what's actually going on in reality. So it's something to consider for people. Well, I think we're pretty much at time there. We'd carry on and do some more ones, but I think we'll do them in person later in the year. We might do something perhaps a bit nearer the end of the year. We know who's gotten through into government, and we've seen whatever
let's see what happens with that first.
Definitely.
And,
we'll get some good food in. I know that always helps drag the team down for a good feed when we have our events at the hub. And John,
want to contact us, there's I did put my email address in the chat,
perfect,
but you've got our contact details, and
definitely.
we're happy.
What we'll do after tonight is we'll send an email round to everybody who registered for this. So although we've got a bundle on the call, there's probably another 10 or more who've not made the Zoom link. And so we will email them the recording, the follow-up contact details, and they'll be able to sort of pick some of this stuff up at their leisure. It is a private thing, this sort of stuff. It's something you want to cogitate over. And so I don't doubt there's people on this call in the next few days, or people listening back to the recap that, you know, they just need to sort of drop an email, pick up the phone and have a chat. One thing I was just gonna quickly screen share before we finish up, because you never know how these things are going to go. It's like, oh, what if we need to do something while we're in breakouts? So I've quickly adapted. Oh, this isn't the one. Ignore me. Not that one. That's the coaching tool that I've adapted. So I'm just gonna stop sharing that. Oh, and I'm going to pull up a different one. So I just sometimes just thinking through where your money's at, full stop. Have I got the right one? Let's see if this is it. Is helpful. So depending on where you're at in your financial thinking, going through a bit of an exercise that kind of helps piece together where you're at and what you can afford and what you're doing. This is a very much a child's play scenario, but sometimes the simplest things are the best. And it's a case of thinking, where are you at with your money and budgeting and stuff? We all have money. We all don't have enough of the stuff. And it's a case of juggling and working out, where is your money working for you, and where do you feel comfortable or you can sleep at night, and where don't you? And so I will email this out after tonight, or you can do a little drawing and do your own thinking and doodling at your leisure. But it's, as I say, it's built on the coaching tool, the Circle of Life sort of coaching tool, and I've just adapted it to think about money. And so you'll have things that are important to you that you spend your money on. It might be your kids, it might be your rent or a mortgage, it might be travel and getting around, whether you've got a car, whether you're getting on the buses, trams, or whatever. It might be a holiday, you know, saving up for that sort of thing. Christmas or a festival in the year might be a big thing for you, and you have to budget for that. You know, whatever it is, what are you know, we're saying here, what are the top 6 things that you have to prioritize spending your money on, and how is it feeling for you right now in having the money to spend, having the money to save? You know, what's your pie looking like when you start to think? 0, I just scroll down. 0 is there is no money for that area of your financial priority. It's just not there. 1 is there's some there, but you're not as comfortable as you need to be in that area. 2 is, you know, it's covered, but you need to improve things. And 3 is, you know, it's covered, you're all right, you want to keep it that way, and maybe you've even got a bit of surplus on that. Maybe you know, there's ways to save a bit of money on that side of things. Who knows? It's just a very simple fag packet tool to have a think about. How are you doing with your money management? This kind of tool will be good to help you think through what, you know, where is money coming in and out of your life or your monthly outgoings. It'll help you talk to people like Phil or Bev if they start talking to you about your mortgage potential. Understanding how much money you're spending in key areas of your life is a given. You have to kind of pinpoint down, you know, what are your outgoings on everything, be it, rent or mortgage, utilities, how much you spend on food, how much you spend on petrol, you know, an monthly amount on, you know, across the year on clothes or holidays, or basically what are your outgoings in a month. So this is the sort of thing that it's a simple tool to just get you thinking, where are you comfortable, where are you not? This tool might also help you when we get into the realms of talking to May Fairweather next month. We've got a session with her, and May will be on hand. Yes, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about setting up a social enterprise whilst on benefits, or whatever benefits they may be. So there were a number of people in our networks who might be on universal credit, like Phil mentioned. They might be in receipt of things like PIP, which is like a disability allowance sort of benefit, other types of allowances and so on. And May's going to be chatting about the highs and lows and loopholes, pitfalls and opportunities, you know, where you can make these things work for you, what you need to be careful of and plan for the future around if you are on benefits and trying to set up your own business. Clearly at Flourish, we're all about trying to help people increase you know, their economic independence and set up ventures that benefit them and their wider community. And often we work with people with lived experience, and that can sometimes mean different kinds of challenges that people have. So we just want to explore that topic around benefits. So again, money stresses, understanding where your money's at or not at, will again help you with those sorts of conversations with May, whether it's to do with the topic of the time, or she's very good at helping people sort of plan, think through their money management scenarios. That session with May, as I mentioned, is Tuesday the 25th of June. It's going to be 12:30 for about an hour and a half. We're doing a lunchtime one rather than an evening one, and we thought we'd see how that goes. So we will send this tool out. I hope it will be useful just to get you to reflect, if nothing else, on kind of where you're at financially. And then for those more in-depth questions around the mortgage stuff, mortgage readiness, and around things like pensions, wills, life insurance that John was looking at, we'll be able to give you those contact details if you've not taken them off the chat, to be able to follow up with some one-to-ones. But I know from the conversations that women in our network have had already with Stones and Young, Karen Howarth, she did a great sort of case study where she was in between properties and needed a bridging loan to kind of help her through a particular period. I'm not saying anything she's not shared herself in a case study there. And you know, Stones and Young saved her 4 or 5 grand and gave us, you know, excellent service and support in a whole range of things that she was looking at that time. There were other people, you know, Kirsty and others who we've been working with, who I know have gone and accessed that support around pensions and around finding out more information about life insurance and other stuff. So if you're wondering, oh, should I, shouldn't I, do take up the opportunity after tonight to get in touch. And I'd just like to say thanks ever so much to Phil and to John and the team for getting involved in this online version. We'll share these learnings and see what feedback we get from the wider network. And yeah, thanks to the team, Aishatu and Judith, for sort of listening in and supporting with the session. So we'll let you get back to your evening and time for a stretch before the next the next thing.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Right,
Take it
Bob.
easy.
Thanks ever so much for that.
See you later.
Good evening. Good evening.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.